If you've ever looked at, a visionary like a masterful painter or a brilliant entrepreneur or even a trailblazing architect and just assumed you weren't born with their specific brand of genetic magic, well, Rick Rubin is here to tell you that you are fundamentally misunderstanding how the universe works.
Yeah, I mean, you aren't locked out of some exclusive genius club. You're really just looking at the wrong door.
Exactly. And in the excerpts we're analyzing today from his book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, this legendary music producer completely dismantles that whole myth of the special artist.
He really does. It's a complete teardown of how we usually think about art.
Right. So our mission today is to uncover his shortcut to a more inspired, highly attuned way of living specifically for you. Because whether you are like prepping for a major corporate presentation or trying to untangle a stubborn personal roadblock, or you're just insanely curious about how the greatest minds actually operate, we are going to prove that creativity is not some rare superpower.
No, not at all. It is literally your birthright.
Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin fundamentally redefining what it actually means to be creative?
Well, we begin by examining the micro decisions you make every single day. The source text argues powerfully that creativity is absolutely not confined to, painting a masterpiece or writing a platinum-selling record.
Wait, and it's not just high art.
Exactly. It's a baseline function of being human. I mean, when you find a completely new route home from work just to avoid a sudden traffic jam, you are creating a spatial solution.
Oh, for sure. Or when you rearrange the furniture in your living room because the space just feels stagnant, you're creating a totally new emotional environment.
Yes, you're bringing a new reality into existence that literally wasn't there 10 minutes ago.
That is just wild to think about.
It is, but that's the core mechanism. We are constantly immersed in this massive field of raw sensory data, and our brains are relentlessly processing that data to generate our subjective reality. You're composing the world you perceive moment by moment.
Because the brain is essentially a prediction machine, right? It's just filling into the gaps of what we see and hear.
Right. And that act of perception is the ultimate creative act. But where the text demands a massive paradigm shift is how it explains the origin of the really big ideas. Rubin introduces a concept he simply calls the source.
I found this deeply fascinating because, my default assumption has always been that brilliant ideas originate entirely inside of us. Like our brains are these isolated, pressurized idea factories.
Most people think that way, yeah.
But the source material flips that completely. It suggests that ideas actually exist out in the universe, out in the ether, so to speak. They're this inexhaustible offering that ripens on a cosmic clock.
The element of timing is so crucial there. Just as there is, a biological season in nature to plant seeds and a season to reap the harvest, there's a specific destined time for an idea to be born.
Which totally explains why two scientists on opposite sides of the planet can sometimes invent the exact same technology in the exact same month without ever speaking to each other.
Exactly. The idea was just ripe. It was time for it to happen.
Which brings up that beautiful cloud analogy from the text. I love this part.
Oh, it's such a great visualization.
Right. The concept is that ideas are essentially like clouds. The physical water never truly disappears. It just changes form. A cloud turns into rain, it joins the ocean, the sun hits the ocean, the water evaporates, and it returns to the sky as a totally new cloud.
And no two clouds will ever take the exact same shape, but the underlying substance is constantly recycling.
Yeah.
That recycling of substance is the mechanical reason why a profound piece of art or a groundbreaking innovation can feel so intensely nostalgic, even if you've never encountered it before.
Like it strikes a chord you didn't know you had.
Precisely. It is the familiar returning to you in a completely unfamiliar form. Because the universe is in a constant state of broadcasting this energetic information.
Okay, so if these ideas are broadcasting constantly, like radio waves, that implies that artists aren't actually generating the signal right. They are simply people walking around with much better antennas.
They are highly attuned translators. But what is incredibly poignant here is the biological reason why some individuals develop those sensitive antennas in the first place.
Right, because it's not what you'd expect.
No, not at all. The text observes that many of the greatest creators don't initially develop this hypersensitivity with the goal of making art. They actually develop it as a biological mechanism to protect themselves.
Protect themselves from what, though? From the world.
Yeah, from the sheer raw intensity of feeling it. For certain people, everything just registers deeper. The beauty of a sunset might be completely overwhelming, but so is the pain of a passing siren or a really harsh conversation.
They just feel everything turned up to 11.
Exactly. They are picking up on microscopic frequencies, subtle energetic shifts in a room, unspoken emotional undercurrents between people. They are basically forced to tune their internal antennas to maximum sensitivity just to navigate their daily environment safely.
Wow. And that exact same hypervigilance is what ultimately allows them to pull down these elusive, incredible ideas from the source.
Yes, the sensitivity is the tool.
Which, I mean, that introduces a massive logistical problem. If these ideas are everywhere, broadcasting 24/7, and we are all theoretically capable of receiving them, why aren't we all catching them? Like, why isn't every person walking down the sidewalk constantly struck by sudden, earth-shattering epiphanies?
Because of a necessary evolutionary compromise. Think of your mind as a vessel constantly receiving data. If you were to take in absolutely every single piece of raw intelligence hitting your senses right now,
It would be too much.
way too much, every microscopic speck of dust catching the light, every overlapping sound wave from 3 blocks away, the exact temperature of your socks, your nervous system wouldn't be able to survive.
Where circuits would literally fry from the data load.
We would be totally paralyzed by the input. So to function, the human mind developed a filter, and this filter takes the vast, infinite intelligence of the source and aggressively compresses it.
It just dumps the excess.
Right, it throws out the vast majority of the data and narrows the rest into very tight, manageable narratives about, who we are, what time it is, and what we need to do next.
It edits reality so we can successfully cross a busy intersection without stopping to marvel at the geometry of a pebble for 3 hours.
Exactly. That filter keeps us alive. But what's fascinating here is the critical tension to become a better creator, to actually tap into the source. You have to learn how to actively bypass that evolutionary filter.
You have to kind of unlearn it.
Yeah, you have to consciously restore a more childlike, innocent state of perception. The text refers to this process as looking for clues.
And the story about gathering clues in the text is just wild. Dr. Andrew Weil, the famous physician, ends up in the hospital, and he's told his appendix has burst.
Oh, I love this story.
It's crazy. The surgical team insists he needs to have it removed immediately. They tell him there are 0 other options for his survival. But before he agrees to the surgery, he walks into a nearby bookstore, picks up a totally random book, lets it fall open, and the very first line his eyes land on says, "If a doctor wants to remove a part of your body, and they tell you it has no function, don't believe this."
It is exactly the kind of synchronicity that makes you reconsider how the world operates.
He actually ended up keeping his appendix, by the way. The text argues that the exact information he needed was made available in that specific moment because he was open to seeing it.
He had his filter down.
Right. It implies that these clues are literally everywhere, just riding on a conveyor belt of information going by us all day if we just look for them. But I have to be honest, I struggle with this mechanically.
How so?
Well, if we force our filter to drop and take in absolutely everything, are we just inviting that exact paralysis we just talked about? Like, we can't function in the modern world floating around waiting for a random paperback to give us medical or business advice.
That's a fair point. But the mechanism of detached awareness is not about throwing away your logic or acting on every single impulse. It's about witnessing the data without immediate judgment.
So you're just observing it.
Right. You let the information arrive, you observe it, but you don't instantly categorize it as useful or useless. You simply hold it.
Yeah.
And to address your point about the modern world, this is exactly why the text insists you have to deliberately level up your internal meter.
By calibrating what goes into the filter in the first place.
Correct. You calibrate it by submerging yourself in great works. You deliberately immerse your senses in raw nature, in classic literature, in masterful cinema. You are basically training your subconscious algorithm.
Because if you're going to filter the world, which we established,
Yeah.
you physically must. You want your brain to be curating your reality from a rich palette of greatness.
Exactly. If you spend an hour reading a masterfully crafted novel every day instead of doom scrolling on your phone, the actual baseline of what your brain considers important data fundamentally changes. Your sensitivity to greatness improves mechanically.
There is a massive paradox here, though. If we successfully lower our filter, to let all these beautiful clues and great works in, we are simultaneously lowering our emotional defenses.
Oh, absolutely.
Does that make us incredibly vulnerable when we actually sit down to make something? The moment you open a blank document to write the memo or start sketching the design, you usually collide with an intense wave of self-doubt.
The text makes it very clear that this self-doubt isn't a glitch. You know, it's an essential feature of the process.
Really? It's an essential feature?
Yeah. The exact same emotional sensitivity required to make art, to notice those subtle clues on the conveyor belt, is the very vulnerability that makes external judgment feel terrifying. The author points out that there are legendary performers with decades of experience, people considered the absolute best in the world at what they do, who still get violently ill from stage fright before every single show.
That is wild. The biological fear response doesn't just vanish because you achieve mastery.
It does.
Which is why the distinction the text makes between two different types of doubt is so important. Doubting your work versus doubting yourself. If you look at a project and ask, is this the absolute best iteration it can be? That kind of doubt is a mechanical tool.
Right. It drives excellence. You can practically doubt your way to a masterpiece.
But if your internal monologue says, I can't do this, I am a fraud, that is an autoimmune response, where the brain attacks its own ideas to protect the ego, it is a biological non-starter. And the text references a brilliant Buddhist concept for that overwhelming negative mental chatter. Papancha.
Papancha, the avalanche of compounding thoughts.
Yeah. And the fascinating mechanism for defeating Papancha isn't to fight it. You don't, argue with the thoughts. You just name the phenomenon.
You step out of the ring entirely.
Exactly. When the doubts flood in, you literally say to yourself, that is just Papancha. By simply putting a label on it, you step outside the storm. You stop being the victim of the thoughts and you become the observer of them. That slight psychological distance strips the mental chatter of its power.
And once you navigate that internal friction, you inevitably slam into the external limitations. Rules. Society operates on rules, but in the realm of creativity, what we call rules are very often just historical assumptions masquerading as absolute laws.
Like the assumption that a painting must be created on a flat piece of canvas stretched tightly over a wooden frame.
Or the assumption that a pop song must be 3 to 5 minutes long and feature a repeating chorus. I mean, a bird does not follow a 3 to 5 minute format. A bird's song has no chorus.
But it's still perfect.
Right. Its song is perfectly suited to its evolutionary purpose. It communicates an invitation, it signals a warning, it ensures survival.
My instinct when trying to break an invisible rule is usually just to ignore it entirely and do whatever I want, but that almost always results in a chaotic mess. There has to be a more strategic way to figure out which of these invisible cages are actually worth breaking.
The primary tool for this is testing the opposite. You look at whatever rule you are blindly following and ask, what is the extreme diametrical opposite of this constraint?
Okay, so if your industry's rule is that your product must be a heavy, physical object.
You ask yourself how the exact same value could exist purely as a weightless digital service. The text frames rules like a playground seesaw. By forcing yourself to walk all the way to the far edge of the seesaw, you force a radical shift in perspective.
You probably won't stay on that extreme edge for the final product, right?
No, usually not. But experiencing that extreme balance point reveals entirely new possibilities that were completely invisible from the safe middle ground.
I love the mechanics of that.
Yeah.
You test the opposite to force a new perspective. But let's say we've done that. We bypass the rules, we name the Papancha, we are deep in the work, and then we make a catastrophic mistake. The project goes sideways, or we just hit a total creative wall where no ideas are coming.
This is where you have to radically lower the stakes. You have to remind your nervous system that art, at its core biological level, is just an experiment. It is free play.
And perfectionism is the ultimate enemy of play.
Exactly, because in play, there is no definitive right or wrong. Historical evidence actually shows that imperfections are very often the exact element that elevates a work to greatness.
The Leaning Tower of Pisa is the ultimate example of this. It was essentially an architectural disaster.
A total failure by normal standards.
Right. The builders made a massive miscalculation with the foundation. The ground shifted, they tried to correct it, and arguably made things weirder. Yet now, hundreds of years later, it is one of the most famous, heavily visited structures on the planet, specifically because of the mistake. The flaw is the magnet.
The Japanese formalized this exact philosophical instinct into the art of Kintsugi. When a valuable piece of pottery breaks, they don't throw it away, and they don't try to seamlessly glue it back together to hide the damage.
They repair the cracks using lacquer mixed with powdered gold, right?
Yes. They deliberately accentuate the fault line. The brokenness becomes the focal point, creating this striking golden vein. The trauma and the repair become the most valuable part of the object's story.
The source even points out how modern software highlights this phenomenon. The author mentions how word processors will underline his made-up words with that angry red squiggle.
We all know that squiggle.
Right. But very often, that grammatically incorrect made-up word conveys the emotional weight better than any approved word in the dictionary. The imperfection is the strength. But what happens when the problem isn't a mistake, but a complete blockage? When you're just stuck?
The text suggests a tool that feels incredibly counterproductive. Distraction.
Wait, distraction like scrolling on your phone?
No. It is vital to separate distraction from procrastination here. Procrastination is a fear-based avoidance that undermines the work. Strategic distraction is a deliberate mechanism used in service of the work.
Okay, I see the difference.
When you reach a hard impasse, staring directly at the problem often engages the conscious mind so intensely that it chokes the creative flow.
The harder you squeeze, the less you hold.
You have to artificially disengage the conscious mind so the vastly more powerful subconscious mind can take over the processing. You hold the problem lightly in the background while you occupy your body with a simple, rhythmic, automatic task.
So we are talking about going for a long drive on a familiar highway, or swimming laps, or honestly doing the laundry.
Exactly. Physical, repetitive motions.
I want to ground this for you, the listener, right now. If you are paralyzed on a massive data project for work, or you cannot figure out how to structure a highly sensitive email, the absolute worst thing you can do is sit at your desk and stare at the blinking cursor.
It'll just freeze you up more.
Right. Getting up, walking to the break room, and slowly washing your coffee mug might mechanically be the most productive step you can take.
The subconscious mind needs a decoy to do its best work. And it is fascinating to see the wildly different sensory environments creators construct to achieve this state.
Like who?
Well, Andy Warhol notoriously required a television, a radio, and a record player all blasting at the exact same time to create his art. Oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare.
For him, it worked. The rapper Eminem apparently requires a single television playing in the background. Meanwhile, the novelist Franz Kafka required a sensory deprivation so extreme he described it as a silence like a dead man.
Wow, complete opposites.
Yeah, you have to experiment to find the specific atmospheric distraction that occupies your conscious mind just enough to let the subconscious problem-solving take over.
Okay, so strategic distraction and rule breaking are fantastic mechanical tools that get the gears turning. But the text argues that to make something that truly resonates on a human level, it has to be grounded in something much deeper than just a clever technique. It has to be grounded in profound intention.
Yes.
There is a story in the book about an old man in Calcutta that illustrates this perfectly.
It is such a brilliant observation on the transfer of energy. So this old man walks to a well every single day to gather water. He carries a fragile clay pot, and he lowers it deep down into the well by hand, inch by inch, very carefully making sure it doesn't scrape the stone sides and shatter. He pulls the heavy pot back up with the exact same painstaking care.
A very slow process.
Right. A traveler watches this agonizing process and finally says, why don't you just rig up a simple pulley system? It would be way faster, much less physical labor, and you could get the exact same amount of water.
And the old man completely rejects the idea.
He refuses. He explains that doing it by hand, feeling the weight of the rope, requires his absolute undivided focus and care. He fears that if he uses a mechanical shortcut, the process will become too easy. His mind will wander.
And if he puts so little care and focus into the act of retrieving the water, he says the water itself couldn't possibly taste as good.
It's beautiful. The text is suggesting that the literal energy of our process is hidden inside the final product.
It absolutely is.
Think about the last time you blindly copy-pasted a slide template for a presentation just to save 20 minutes. Did it convey the data? Sure. But did it have any magnetic pull? People can subconsciously feel when you use the pulley system instead of doing it by hand.
That unseen, focused energy is what gives any work its resonance. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it points to a much larger ecosystem. All work is fundamentally a collaboration.
A collaboration with who? The audience.
With the audience, sure, but also with your raw materials, with the historical context of your field, and ultimately with the universe itself. We operate very much like bees pollinating a flower.
Oh, I like that.
Right. A bee doesn't intellectually understand its grand vital role in preserving the balance of the global ecosystem. It isn't analyzing botanical reproduction. It is simply purely following the scent of the nectar. It is just playing its part.
So if our job is just to follow the scent, how do we practically train ourselves to find it? How do we cultivate the kind of patience the old man at the well had?
It requires developing a rigorous practice of deep listening. And this is not a passive state. True listening means entirely suspending your disbelief and your defensive reflexes.
It means you aren't rapidly formulating your clever rebuttal while the other person is still talking.
Exactly. You are actively holding space for their reality.
You're absorbing the data rather than deflecting it.
Yes. And the text emphasizes that this is a full-body physical experience. It uses the difference between wearing headphones and listening to large speakers in a room.
Oh, that's a great distinction.
Headphones isolate the sound directly into your ear canals. It's a localized mental experience. But large studio speakers move the air in the room. The bass vibrations physically strike your chest. You feel the resonance in your bones.
You're experiencing the sound, not just hearing it.
True listening requires that level of full-body receptivity. It also changes how we consume written information. In our modern obsession with maximum efficiency, we skim bullet point summaries and listen to audiobooks on double speed.
Guilty as charged.
We all do it, but true listening demands that we read a complex paragraph slowly and be entirely willing to stop, go back, and reread it 3 times just to fully grasp its deepest structural nuances. You cannot rush nuance. It only reveals itself to patience.
Let's pull all of these threads together. The fundamental takeaway from Rubin's work is this. You are already a creator. That is your baseline. Your job isn't to conjure genius out of a vacuum. Your job is to widen your vessel.
To look closely at the conveyor belt of clues.
Yes. When the mental avalanche of Papancha hits, you label it to strip its power. When your project fractures, you fill the cracks with gold like Kintsugi. You dismantle the invisible rules of your industry by aggressively testing their opposites.
And you engage with your daily tasks with the profound, focused patience of the old man at the well.
And through all of that, you accept that every single act is a collaboration with something larger than yourself.
Right, it takes the pressure off.
Exactly. Which brings us to one final lingering idea from the text that I want you to sit with today. The author points out that art is ultimately just an agreement.
An agreement between the creator and the world.
Right. Marcel Duchamp famously dragged a literal porcelain urinal into an art gallery, titled it Fountain, and simply because he firmly decided it was art, the world eventually agreed. It was a projection of intention.
He claimed it, so it was.
So if your whole life is an open collaboration with the universe, what is the art you are currently making out of your daily routine without even realizing it?
That's a profound question to ask yourself.
Look closely at your biggest daily frustration right now. Look at the most mundane, aggravating roadblock in your schedule. What if you chose to agree right now that this annoying obstacle isn't actually a roadblock at all? What if it is a highly specific, creative constraint deliberately placed there by the universe for you to solve beautifully?
Framing it that way changes the entire nature of the problem.
It turns a burden into a canvas. So, forget the myth of the Genius Club. There is no locked door, you're already inside. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there, trust the cosmic clock, and keep your antennas up.